Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
Hey, folks, we're ready for another show for Simply Trade. We've got a special one here for today, at Simply Trade Events. Renee Cuccarelli is sitting in for Lalo Solorzano. And I'm hoping that I have pronounced that right. I think I'm getting better at that, Renee.
And you're better than I am, for crying out loud.
I love it. I love it. Well, with that, I will say that it is springtime. It is the beginning of, we've already had several conferences that we've been able to attend from a Simply Trade. And so there's more and more coming out here and whatnot. But you and I got to finally meet each other face to face.
That was so cool.
Oh man, out at it was, I started to say Long Beach. It wasn't the Long Beach one.
San
Diego. Okay. Yeah. But it was still cool out there. That's the one thing about this springtime. It's like a tease. Here's beautiful sunshine, beautiful blue skies. And as I would say, put bumps on the goose because it's still chilly outside, right?
That's right.
So we've got some great guests. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we got lucky in San Diego. It's been raining in California. We had like a real winter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and the mudslides. Oh, my gosh. You guys have really had it. So that's bad. Anyway. Okay, so we have today, we're going to talk about the NCBFAA. And for those that don't know what that is, let me see if I get this right, Megan and JD, and see what we're going here. The National Customs Brokers and Freight Forwarders Association. Is that right?
So close, so close. The National Customs Brokers and Forwarders Association of America, 1F, 2 A's. It took me a long time to learn that after I...
Well, I don't feel so bad, but you know me, my elevator doesn't make it all the way to the top sometimes. So, okay, Sam, thank you for getting that right. All right, so JD Gonzalez, you are the elected chair or president, or what's your title now with the association?
I actually am the current president of the NCBFAA, and I'm representing over 1,300 members. So thanks for inviting us here.
All right. And we also have, so JD Gonzalez is on, and then we have Megan Montgomery. Megan and I go back a ways, and what a great, you are such a gem. And I just love being around you. You're always just a blast to be with.
Thank you. I tell my members, and I mean it, every day I wake up and I feel lucky to get to have this job and to represent them. So it's really fun.
I love it. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about, now you are, Megan, you're in the DC area there, right?
Yep, I'm the executive director of the NCBFAA. So I get to work with JD in my primary role as the coordinator, and JD's, thankfully for us, his volunteer role as president.
Well, you know, JD, you've got the thing where you would be considered the eye candy of the association, that you're out there presenting things, pushing the issues, and poor Megan is the official herder of cats, trying to get that organization together and does a great job with it. So is that a pretty good sum of?
Yeah, you know what, Andy, that sums it up quite well. I tell you what, Megan is just the right hand. She takes care of everything and makes it real easy for me. So, and I just feel really privileged to be up there at the top right now. So.
Well, you guys have a conference that we're going to get to see each other face to face again here in just about, 10 days, I guess?
Yeah, the staff starts leaving in 6 days, 5 days. And yeah, the folks start rolling in on Friday for Saturday meetings.
Well, I'm looking for, man, I am as giddy as a filly on a spring morning to get to see everybody and see what's going on with things. But JD, okay, so as we're gearing up, Folks have already signed up. I doubt if there's any other slots left because you probably have a sold out situation here. So as we're gearing up for this, what's the main things that you're looking at this year's conference that you're pushing for, and what people can expect, I guess, to come out of the conference?
More than anything else, participation and just getting engagement in with a membership, because the fact is we get to meet all our members at this particular time. Last year we had 700. We're close to hitting the same numbers again this time. We're a little over 650, I believe. And I tell you what, it's just an opportunity to sit there one-on-one, get to know who the members are, get to know what the needs are, and all the challenges going on throughout customs right now. A lot of, I tell you what, we had meetings there in DC just yesterday, and looking forward to sit there and see how we can outreach to our members, outreach to the trade as well, and see how we can just improve and make a better situation considering the political environment, and also in addition to the trade environment that's going on right now. So.
Well, to that point, let me jump in and say something here real quick. For our listeners, this is one of those things where these are customs brokers and the freight forwarders, and they're getting together for their annual conference in this one. And you may be looking at it going, well, why should I even listen to this? Or what's the big deal? There are some very serious issues that will affect you as an importer and exporter. That this is your group that actually works as an advocate for you, not only as service providers that there are issues they have to deal with, but they have to do strategic planning and dealing with their own committees and whatnot to, advocate on behalf of the importing and exporting community. So this is one of those areas where you probably need to be aware of what they're faced with or what they're working on. And if you don't care for something, or if you have a question, this gives you a little tidbit here to where you need to ask your service provider, hey, what's the story on this issue? Because using your brokers as an information source is so vital. And that's one thing before we go too much further into that, Renee, I guess I'm going to defer to you as in your past history of being in the compliance arena and whatnot in the aerospace industry and all that. Would you rely on your brokers and I guess the freight forwarders and all that to help keep you abreast of what's going on in the industry?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But we took it upon ourselves as an organization to make sure we were informed. I would say we collaborated and partnered with them versus relied, which I think is a good stance for most importers and exporters, because they're a great partner. Sometimes they're up in front, and industry associations like NCBFAA. I almost said FFA.
That's hey, FFA. There you go. I'm like, okay, I'm going to show my calf here or whatever. No, wrong deal.
Yeah, I do that. Oh my gosh. But we just got to remember FAA, right? But anyway, the groups like that have the legislative presence and represent us are so important, and the partnership. So that's how I approached it during my career, more of a partnership.
Megan, let me come to you and real quick, as far as the conference, as it's coming up here and whatnot, I can imagine you really start planning soon as the main conference is over. You're already planning for the next year. So it's probably been almost a full year-long process in getting things together. From your position and all that, trying to get folks involved, I imagine there's the old 80-20 rule. 80% of the work's done by 20% of the folks involved, and that 20% is always so active. Are you seeing that, or do you see a broader base of involvement and volunteerism, if you will, from the membership?
Yeah, so we are very lucky. When I left AAEI, I thought I will never love an organization more than I loved AAEI and my members. And then I got to land here at NCBFAA, and I found out that wasn't true, right? I have a special spot in my heart for AAEI, but man, Andy and Renee, our members come together. They come together with their competitors, which I think is, important to note, to solve problems that affect our clients, our industry, our all of our folks that are doing this work, our transportation partners. And you're right, Renee, what we want as our industry is we want to be partners with valued partners with our clients. When our clients are facing an issue, we want them to come to the NCBFAA. And we're very, very lucky that throughout the government, we are really thought of as not just, another trade association, but really the highest level of compliance. We were meeting with CBP yesterday, and CBP's comments were, we know that the NCBFAA member is the most compliant, member broker that we can find out there, because they're active, they're engaged, they know what's going on. And we've got a lot of different folks who are engaged sort of to their need. A lot of our folks are very small shops. They read the MMB, they put in, they email in when they have a question. That's a great way to be involved. A lot more of them sit on committees. They helped draft things. They helped, liaise with the local trade associations. There is a place for everyone here at the NCBFAA.
Well, if anybody is a new licensed customs broker, or if you've gone for the exam, or and you've passed and you're in that process of getting vetted and qualified and whatever, this is an organization you really should be definitely interested in joining and getting involved with and staying abreast. Even if you don't get to go to the conferences, it is such a valuable, again, resource, staying up to date on things now and whatnot. So I highly, recommend it. But JD, let me come to you here with the role that you're playing. Is this something where, as an elected official, if you will, of the organization, man, I'll tell you what, excuse me, folks, it's that springtime and it's like that sinuses gets to you and I keep getting choked up and I'm like, Dad gummit, jeez.
It was probably that rattlesnake hunting you did back in the day.
I got a good story. I've got a good story on the rattlesnake thing. I'll tell you y'all in a second. But anyway, all right, JD, when as an elected official of the organization now, and you're representing, you said 1,300 members, putting forth the agenda, if you will, the top priorities for the organization, is that something that you do in a vacuum, or do you have an executive committee, or do you work with the whole membership, or how do you guys look at it and say, you know what, here are the issues that we need to deal with, and here's the priority of what we're going to try and accomplish?
You know what, Andy, that's a good question, and thanks for asking it. I tell you what, it's a team that we have. And I tell you what, it's teamwork within the group that we have as volunteers. More details, we start off with the executive committee. In addition to that, we also have various committees that are involved with, the PGAs, in addition to the transportation. And they come up with all the information that we need to go ahead and provide and disseminate to our members. On top of that, we also deal with a affiliate presidents network that we go out there and reach to all the smaller associations. So we're like the mothership, reaching out to everybody, and then we get information from the bottom, working its way to the top, and then filter it out and decide what we're going through. In addition to communication with customs as well, because they're going out there on top of keywords. What's that? Right now, you hear the hot topics, the minimis, Type 86. You hear 21st century framework. All that's coming out there, and we try to decipher, try to make sure that we have our participation involved. Also, give the key elements to customs to make sure this really works, and we feel this really works for all of us, make it a win-win for the entire community. So it's a team effort. I tell you what, right now I have a StarCast team that's working great for all of us. So,
and
well, as we're
Andy,
go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, if I can just add that, I think in addition to all of our volunteer members, we are incredibly lucky to have, frankly, I think the best counsel in the industry. We've got Ashley Craig of Venable. We've got Lenny Feldman and Nicole Bivens Collinson and Ned Steiner STR. And we have Cindy Thomas, who has been with us with the RAC committee for 40 years, almost 40 years. And, our members get to have access to counsel that frankly, very few of them could access on their own. And we have got just excellent guidance to kind of navigate where we need to go with the industry.
Well, I can tell you mentioned some powerhouse attorneys there that are phenomenal. I do know several folks within the Venable organization that, man, you're talking about some influential law firm there. That is a great one. Lindsay Meyer in particular is a good friend, and I love her to death. I've been trying to get her on the show because she is so phenomenally knowledgeable on things. But Lenny, oh Lord have mercy, everybody knows Lenny, and if you go to a conference and you miss, and Lenny's there and you miss him, you weren't looking for him because he's 10 feet tall and he's strutting around.
Sounds like Andy Shiles.
I don't know about that. I got to say this. Everybody says, I look for the cowboy hat, and if it's in there, it's like, okay. He's like, all right, folks.
Different accent for sure.
That's for sure. JD, all right, let's talk a minute about some of the priorities for I guess as we're leading into it. There's been stuff in the past. We know about all kinds of supply chain disruptions that is, both import and export affiliated, especially with even the Red Sea situation and the Houthis attacking ships out of Yemen. The steamship lines have elected on a lot to stop going through that Suez Canal area and the Red Sea area and all that, and they're going down around the Cape. Well, that has caused a delay in some of the positioning of those ships, as well as the containers and the resources and all that. And then secondarily, it's affected Europe probably worse than the U.S. initially. But then the secondary thing is that in the positioning of these things, knowing all these kind of different supply chain situations that are going on, what do you see going forward as some of the key things that your association is focused on in the next year here?
And the one thing I know, just to bring it a little bit closer to home, just looking at Baltimore, what we see happening there in Baltimore, we're also working on diversion, and we're just working on diversion and working with the customs to make sure that we can kind of get the flow of trade. On top of that, just a little background, we're also involved with DHS, and we're in the supply chain resiliency group as well. So we're having communication with the other associations, obviously the ports, in addition to the land borders, and just having discussions how we can improve any kind of situations that are going through, and also how we can kind of move forward in the best manner to protect the supply chain industry. Like we mentioned earlier, we are the boots on the ground. We're in the middle. There's also the transportation aspect as well. So we have to make sure we work together as one unit to make sure that we get the flow of supply chain. Considering, we just had the pandemic a few years ago, and also during that time frame, there was a lot of issues. There was a learning curve for a lot of us. So we're trying to learn from those mistakes to sit there and move forward. That doesn't happen again as well. So
I love it. Megan, do you get a lot of requests from different government agencies that are, shall we say, wanting the opinion of the Brokers Association?
Well, whether or not they want our opinion, they do get it.
You're going to give it anyway. I love it.
Yeah, we work, of course, closely with the FMC, with CBP, DHS, with Commerce, with Census, those kind of what you think of as the traditional trade touching agencies. But we have cargo, we touch every HTS, we touch every PGA, and PGAs present a unique challenge because they often don't know very much about trade. Trade regulation of trade is not their primary shtick, right? When you think of like the FDA or the EPA, their job is to keep food and chemicals that come in and that, transfer around our company or our economy safe and secure. They are not primarily traders, although that is an increasingly large part of what they do. And so when agencies either get a new mandate from Congress or they come up with, new regulations for trade, we really try and work with them to explain how the current trade process works. APHIS is a good one. FSIS has been very active. AMS Organics. We want regulations that are implementable, that are fair, that are reasonable, and that do what they intend to do. And so with thanks to our RAC team, which you guys have met, a couple of them, Michael Hare, Karen Damon, and then of course our powerhouse, Cindy Thomas, they spend a tremendous, tremendous amount of time working with, working for, working through the PGAs that impact our industry.
Let me stop for just a second. For our listeners, you hear the term PGA. Folks, what that means is participating government agency. Another way that we used to say it was OGAs, other governmental agencies, meaning other agencies other than customs. So if you hear that term, that's what that means. Okay,
there's 47 of them. So
yeah,
there's a lot to keep track of.
And we call it, the traditional way to refer to them is the alphabet soup. EPA, DOD, and ABC, MOUSE, whatever. Okay, JD. First off, I'm going to throw you a question here, and Renee, I've been throwing a lot out there, so I'm going to allow you. It's like jump in here in just a second. So JD, as far as I don't know how many committees y'all have and whatnot, but just interestingly is like, do you have an agenda for each committee, or are you zeroing in on trying to zero in and say, we're going to try and accomplish one key thing or three key things in each committee that you're involved with, or how's that all working?
I'm glad you asked. I know earlier you mentioned that Megan herds the cats, and I'm just the top of the food chain right now. Just the picture as part of the show. But the thing about it is, each committee has a chair and a vice chair as well. And in addition to that, there's subcommittees in there. And let's say with the transportation, we have the ocean, you have the air. So there's several other committees that go out there and then bring up their topics. So they're the ones that get together, that are bringing up the hot topics and working with the legislative chairs that we also work with as well. So they get together and they bring up the hot topics that are going on at the particular time. A lot of it's legislative. And just recently, we just went through some legislative wins that we went out there. And one of the CBMA, which is dealing with the Bankruptcy Act, we just passed that. And that was actually working through the legislative chair, and it worked through also the customs chair. So that works its way up. So depending on the hot topic, whatever customs bringing out. And like Megan mentioned earlier, there's also organics that was coming out that just was last month. That's a key topic. They're really trying to work forward on that as well. So that's one of the topics that they're bringing up with, like you mentioned, the PGAs, the alphabet soup. So we're trying to sit there, make sure that moves forward. And any of the hot movements that are going on right now, usually a lot of the topics that we're working with are something that's happened within the next 6 months. And just to make sure that, hey, this is going on right now. Continuing education as a brokerage community, we're working on that as well. So there's a lot of hot irons on the plate that we're trying to work on, and we're sitting there just trying to make sure that we pass them along and just disseminate to our members and work together with this one.
Hey, Andy, I would say too, when I started out, I literally started out the bridge, but I ended up as a director at Raytheon. So I was kind of like, I climbed up, and in the beginning, I had no idea of my career, the legislative importance that held for us. I just thought, we just signed some paperwork, we're clearing trucks. You know what I mean? But what you guys do is so pinnacle. Yeah. It wasn't till I climbed up a little bit and got into management that I realized the significance, even like this Customs Business Fairness Act, which is, hey, your acronym's inside that one, CBFA. But tell the audience how that works, because if you're new in the business, you don't really understand the parties and how long it takes and what the magnitude of what you guys do, which is phenomenal. I always felt bad for the brokers when they, if they had to file for bankruptcy because the importers didn't pay them. So how does that work? If our listeners, you have a subcommittee, you meet with the congressman. I met with a congressman for a miscellaneous tariff bill once when I worked for a large importer, and I just thought it was so cool. I was young in my career, and we got to meet with him, and we, our president came in, and then we got to sign the bill, with him, and it was. So tell us a little bit about that process.
Do you want me to talk about the process, or you want to do it?
No, please do so. I know that's a lengthy process, over 20 years. So Megan, you know a lot more.
Yep, it's been 20 years in the making. So it starts with, if anybody hasn't seen I'm Just a Bill from Schoolhouse Rock, it really is how it works.
Oh, do I remember that?
So it starts with finding a champion to introduce it. And because we work on legislation that is nonpartisan, bipartisan, whatever you want to call it, we like to have an R and a D to co-introduce the bill. Every 2 years, if your bill doesn't pass, you need to get a reintroduction. Over 20 years, people retire, they move on, they get redistricted, the port's not in their district anymore. So we get it introduced, and with thanks to John Kent, who was our legislative counsel for over 20 years for almost 40 years. And now in Nicole Bivens Collinson, we have excellent boots on the ground, folks that are in it, in this game. That's what they do. Then we have to go get co-sponsors. So we have the meetings just like you were at. We have our government affairs conference every year, and we get our attendees to take our position papers to go to the Hill to explain why this matters, because what this legislation in particular allows is for when an importer goes bankrupt, customs brokers who have acted through pass-through to the government for money, right? And we're talking about some steel shipments alone can be $1 million in duties. We are talking about huge amounts of money, sometimes on every entry, that for whatever money that was passed through to the government, not their fees, not their anything else, just that money that the government has already received, that money not be clawed back in a bankruptcy, that for that money, the customs broker just be allowed to stand in the place of a government and not go to the back of the line for reimbursement. And this will keep our members in business. We know there have been several bankruptcies directly as a result of importers going bankrupt, like our members who provide good jobs, in districts that don't often have a lot of good jobs. They get the opportunity to really just keep their business afloat. And so we have the meetings, we tell our story, and then eventually it gets attached to something that goes and it rides and it roads and it's official.
Yeah, that's so cool. What a long road, though. You got to be committed.
Yeah. And, the thing with much of our legislation, nobody's getting reelected on this, right? It's not sexy. It's not like everybody understands. And, we have lots of people that say, oh, yeah, listen, I'm with you, but that's not going to get me polling in my district. That's not going to get me my average constituent isn't going to say I'm going to vote for this guy over that guy because of this bill. And so we never have been in a position where we faced anything controversial. It's just not sexy enough. It's never going to be a bill that moves on its own. And so that is why when it got attached to a bill that we knew was going to go. And by the way, if you attach your bill to a bill that has promise but then doesn't go, you're stuck, right? You're stuck a whole another year. So it's part political game, and it's part, getting the troops engaged. And yeah, it's like a game of Risk, except all of your members' financial futures hang in your balance.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for describing that.
Well, one of the things I will say is that you mentioned de minimis is an issue, and we recorded a show yesterday, actually, with Cindy Allen and Amy Magnus, and we were talking about the trade summit and some of the things that came out of there. And then again, there was discussion about the de minimis. I will say that's one of those things I would love to be able to see, and I'll offer this just because de minimis gets, I don't know if I guess it's controversial. There's people that are passionate about it on multiple fronts. I'd love to facilitate a discussion and just see what happens here, because there are people that are pushing different things. And I got to say, some of the things I've seen being pushed, I'm looking at going, okay, well, it may benefit the brokers, but it's not going to benefit the average, person on the street. On the flip side, there's some things that need to be looked at. And I'm going, I don't think there needs to be any additional legislation. We just need to make sure that the customs in particular and others enforce what they already have the authority to do. And if there's something in a de minimis value breakout, and by the way, folks, let me back up. I'm sorry. If you hear the term de minimis, that is in the trade, that is a shipment that's coming in and it's not worth, it's so low in value. It's de minimis as the term. It's that customs doesn't want to see an entry on it. It's just, let's just process it with minimal administrative type things. However, in the U.S., it's less than $800. So if you were to go out of town or something and you're out of the country, you come back in, you buy some goods. When you come back in, you can declare whatever items that you have an exemption up to $800 duty free. And it's de minimis, and they'll look at it and say, yeah, okay, fine. You've declared it. The problem is in the U.S. is that in cargo wise, it's more than just that. You have $800 limit. Here's where I have an issue is that even if there's additional legislation, hence then from legislation, there's more regulation from the bureaucrats, you still have to have customs and other agencies then do inspections to verify what's in there. I personally don't believe that there's additional regulations that are needed. It's just a case of, hey, if this was valued at, let's say, $60, and turns out it's really a $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 item, customs can then just say, we're requiring an entry on this. And if the importer wants to do it, great. And if not, there's some things in there. There's some ideas on how to deal with some of that, but that's been the issue where there's been some things that in the de minimis have been coming in undervalued, not declared with the correct value and whatnot. But as we talk through this, I think there's an unrealistic expectation that customs and other agencies have towards the brokers and carriers on how to deal with the de minimis. You should know what's in that box. No, you only have what the paperwork's been provided. And that, so the issue comes back in, like, if there are companies that are utilizing de minimis, e-commerce is one of the biggest ones. If you're doing the right corporate things and crossing the T's and dotting the I's, then your freight should be facilitated and moves on through. And those items that are not with vague description and whatever, yeah, they should be stopped and looked at. And it plays fair in that scenario. I know that's a little bit of a soapbox and long rendition, but JD, let me defer to you in a sense on this particular issue. And then Megan, is that on the de minimis scenario there, and as we talk through these issues, do you have any comments in that, and how should people get involved if they want to offer their opinion on what should be done?
You know what, Andy, I tell you what, you're right. This is a very hot topic, and I know there's a lot of discussion. And if you go back to the trade summit, a lot of information was provided. A lot of the mistakes, a lot of generic descriptions that are being provided, clothing instead of deep down into the actual item, T-shirts or shirts or whatever. So that's very generic, and there's some issues on that. I know there's some information going out with the textile industry to protect them, because a lot of it seems to be textile. A lot of commodities are coming from China as well. So I know that the Express Group is really they're supporting this, and they have a lot of good measures in place. But then what's opening up is to the other modes of transportation. I'm going to go be from Laredo. I'm talking about the southern border. And, a lot of the individuals coming in from the carriers that provide that information. And to them, it's a business model. They're not really looking at some of the compliance requirements, and they're just trying to get the merchandise across, considering it's an opportunity for business. So I think there's some challenges that customers are reaching out to us for to sit there work through. On top of that, I know that the challenges, one of them is being description or HTS. So I know that there's something in there to try to determine whether the partner government agencies can make a true valid verification to make sure, hey, risk assessment on the product to make sure, hey, does it really qualify or doesn't based on off a URL or a description, or do we really have to go to the HTS? So we're working through that. Obviously, customs is very involved. They're providing information. I know the other thing on the southern border is fentanyl's coming through a lot of this process as well. So we're just trying to keep an eye on this, make sure we keep ahead of the curve and trying to work with customs and as well as with all our partner associations to make sure it's a win-win for all of us. So.
And, I think, Andy, you mentioned that sometimes people are not honest about the value, but also sometimes bad actors are not honest about what's in that box. No one writes fentanyl. No one writes pill press, right? No one writes fentanyl precursors. That's not what they put. They put banal things. And so what we all know is that customs cannot inspect their way out of this issue. Even if they hired 1 million inspectors, right? We are getting 1 million packages a day or a year, 1 billion packages a year, several million packages a day. They're just coming fast and furious. And so what we need to do together as an industry is we need to shrink the haystack. We need to figure out who the legitimate actors are, who are those folks out there hiring brokers, trying to do the right thing, figuring that out. And then we'll get to increasingly small amounts of packages that are truly unknown entities. And then we can deal with that much, much smaller haystack. And I think we're getting there. I think it's a hard road. Customs is being asked to do a lot with, frankly, not very many more resources.
Well, and I think there was, on this particular issue, and this is a personal thing for me, is that I think there needs to be a working group specifically to the de minimis issue, but that would have, shall we say, a subgroup for each mode of transportation, because each mode is handled differently. And I got to say, the one thing that on the de minimis, it started out where the express carriers predominantly, if you will, utilize this. And there's so much automation with it. UPS, DHL, FedEx, companies like that. And one of the biggest complaints is that it's not with the express carriers, although they get lumped in there, that you have the post office. So the post office is competing in the private sector under that realm. And yet they are one of the most unautomated, non-system related type processes out there. And so there's a big hole in there. That's one. Another one that I didn't realize until recent, you said there's over 1 billion shipments that are coming through every year into the U.S. And so you've got the trucking side of things, cross-border bandits, as we used to call them, and whatnot. And then you also have the ocean containers that are just chock full of these things. And so I guess I have to look at it going, if they're going to utilize that, who has been the most effective in dealing with and minimizing, I guess, the non-compliant de minimis shipments? And you got to give tribute to the express carriers. They have invested so much in that realm. And it's like, okay, so here's the dilemma. You have a truck comes across or a container comes off a ship. And based on whatever's in there, there's maybe 3 packages that they want to take a look at. And everybody goes, well, what am I going to do? Hold up the whole truck? Well, I'm sorry. If you're going to utilize that, you've got to be able to break that down and provide that. I don't think it's on customs back. I think it's on the carrier's back. That's going to deal with some of that. But regardless, as we're looking through this is one of those that I think needs a lot of involvement and a lot of discussion, but people keep dancing around this issue. And to me, I'm like, I'm going to take the bull by the horns and let's wrestle this sucker down here. And I think there needs to be representatives from different aspects of the industry and jump in there and talk about this thing.
And and I'm glad you brought that up. And there is working groups out there, a co-op working group, and they have representatives from several industries. In addition to that, they have dropped it down to subcategories as well. So we're providing all the details that they need, some of the suggestions that are being requested from the trade to sit there and say, how our involvement, how it can improve the method. But obviously, it's still a concern, as I mentioned earlier. I know that we're going through that, but the working group has been established, and there's almost a monthly, even sometimes bi-weekly outreach just to sit there, see how we can make suggestions to help improve the madness to all this. But at the same time, hey, Customs has a approach that they have to advise everybody before they take any legitimate actions on this one.
And, Andy, I think you're right. I mean, I think in working with partnership with our members, the express consignment operators, and working with CBP, the express consignment operators have invested what they need to invest to be highly compliant. First of all, they're US based. There's somebody in the US that CBP can hold accountable. And they have opened up their supply chains, their systems, their warehouses. They have brought CBP into their facilities to try and partner for compliance. But when you talk about these, the shipping containers that are coming in via ocean, the trucks that are coming over the border, you are talking about foreign agents clearing off a manifest without a bond. So who is CBP going to hold responsible? Who? What, your grandma that ordered something from Amazon that, she didn't know was going to come from overseas? Like, we need in this system some sort of designated U.S. importer for these small packages. And, it's not the broker. That's not the appropriate party, because the broker does not own the goods. They don't, they've never seen the goods. They're not packing the goods. But much like the ISF importer or maybe the FSVP importer, somewhere in this transaction, somebody has to decide who in America is taking responsibility for what's in this box. And I think once we get there, we're really going to start to shrink that pile of hay.
It seems like this is where our supply chain security programs really could help out a little bit too. I mean, we've got layered security. So, that's focused on ocean, but I think it needs to spread out a little bit in the land and air side of the disciplines.
And that's the other thing, though, I will say is that the information being provided, the timing on it is another thing, is the giving the agencies time to look at it and review it as far as manifest, and if it's good quality, and if it's not, there's got to be a stance in there. And that's, I mean, I'm not trying to play armchair quarterback here. I'm trying to look at it from, it's like, people have talked about this and it goes on and on and on. And it's like, well, let's get some definitive action and let's do something about it, because it really is hurting the economy. A case in point, most recent for our listeners, it's my understanding that everybody knows that here shortly we're going to have a major eclipse going on. Everybody's looking at that. Great. Guess what? There are some glasses that you can put on that are made out of cardboard, and then these lenses that are you should be able to watch it. It's almost like having welding a welder's lens on there, but it's done with cardboard. Apparently, there are some eclipse glasses that were manufactured in China, is the accusation. I personally have not seen them, but that's the accusation on it, that do not comply and are not good for you. So they're marketed as you can watch the eclipse, but it's also going to damage your eyes because they are not sufficient. And that came through the de minimis ranks, is what my understanding is, what I'm hearing.
So, when I worked in the auto industry, right, this is now almost 25 years ago, maybe even 25 years ago. Gosh, don't tell anybody. Shh. When I worked in the auto industry, we dealt with this. It was a different, shipping situation, but these mufflers that, were counterfeit, that you cut them open and they're stuffed with grass, dried grass, brake pads that were made of, whatever, rags from, that they put a little grease on and shaped into brake pads. I mean, this is serious stuff, what's in the box. And somebody in America needs to be responsible for that.
Well, or I guess I'm looking at, they also need to be looked at and say, we're not going to allow that shipper or that company to import in or to ship in and sell into the U.S. I mean, there's ways to go around this. To me, I guess I look at it, traditionally, you're looking at that there's got to be a U.S. entity and a serve-to party. Okay, in this case, it's the de minimis. Just stop the daggum things and just kick them back. It's like, you know what? If it costs them to do business, I mean, there you go. But that's oversimplification. I don't want to do that. And I don't want to minimize those that are involved in this. I just will say it's another area where you guys have been involved as a great association. This is one that, we've danced around this with different entities. And I'm like, man, I would love, similar to what we did with the entry simplification working group, is there ought to be a de minimis working group that is more than just the COAC, in my opinion. COAC is fine. I think they're also limited. I think this needs a broader group of people involved to come back with some definitive things. Let's look at it. Let's literally get something that we can sink our teeth into to say, this is going to help us in this realm. But okay. Enough of the soapbox, I guess, on that. Any other last little items here for your conferences that's coming up? Obviously, there's going to be some updates from that. Simply Trade's going to be at the conference, so we're going to get to interview some folks. We're looking forward to it. I'm telling you what, it's just I am really excited, and y'all are going to be so excited with some of the equipment we're bringing. I'm telling you that your conference is going to be the first one that we're opening up this the cameras and the audio side of things. So I'm telling you what, you're going to be able to strut around like a banty rooster in the barnyard. So it's going to be looking good.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting. Yeah. We've got a great lineup, for those of you who are not registered, watch what comes out from your brokers as you touch trade. We've got the Commissioner of Customs. We've got the Chairman of the FMC. We've got David Axelrod. Then we've got a whole bunch of government folks. We really have we think kind of the best folks to talk. We've got a lot of the PGAs to talk about the issues and to send the attendees home with immediately actionable information that will make their clients' lives better. And we're really excited. That's
really, Perry. If you are a member of the Brokers and Freight Forwarders Association here, make sure that you're looking at what action do you need to take. If you're not attending, be on the lookout to see what you can do, because I know y'all have a very active website. You're updating things and all that. So, and the communication thereof. So it's like, what action do you need to take away after this conference? JD, any comments from you on your side of things?
No, thanks, Andy. And thanks for promoting our event that's coming up here in the next couple of weeks. We start on, I believe, on the 14th to the 17th. And we're starting off with entertainment with a golf tournament as well. So hopefully everybody can attend, and we welcome everybody. And please reach out. I'm always available. I'm looking forward to hear your ideas and anything we can do to make things better for the association. In addition, for the conferences as well, for future conferences. So thank you.
Fantastic. Renee, anything from you on your observations from what we've done? Obviously, I've talked the horns off of Billy Goat and the New York Second today.
No, I just want to thank JD and Megan and the whole team at the association. I mean, the work you do is phenomenal, important, pinnacle, and needed. So thank you for being there. It's just awesome to have you guys.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to seeing y'all. And, I don't know if it's too late for me to be able to get in and figure out on the flights and all that on the golf. I love to play golf, but I can't hit the broadside of a barn if my nose was stuck to it. So I don't know.
We do I think it's called a round robin, where the number one player in your foursome goes against everybody other's number one player.
The best ball. Is that best ball?
I don't know. I don't play golf, to be fair.
I don't either. Yeah.
Well, let's put this. I'd be far from being that top number one player. I'd be the one that's the tail dragger there. So,
That's all right. Everybody has a good time. That's what's important.
Well, that's it. And it's going to be in Fort Lauderdale. So, folks, I'm telling you what, it's just like, got to get down there and work on the tan and, get some sunshine and all that. So, also, seriously, looking forward to a great conference. For those that are listening again, we greatly appreciate your listenership, man, we are trending up. It is just humbling. Lala and I really love, when we go out, we are having more and more people coming up, and the first time that they've met us and all that, and we greatly appreciate that. So I'm looking forward to the Brokers Association, getting down there and rubbing elbows with y'all and having a good time. So with that, folks, have a great day, and we look forward to our next show.
Thanks so much, Andy. Thanks, Andy and Renee, for having us on. We feel very lucky.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.